Welcome to the IDP Guys podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hungarter. I am a writer over at the Fantasy Six Pack and IDP Guys. I'm also an ECR ranker over at Fantasy Pros. My Twitter handle is at IDP Hunter, and I'm joined tonight by the Fantasy Sports Doctor, Dr. James Ferretti. How you doing, James?
Oh, I'm doing well, Steve. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. The Fantasy Sports Doctor, he is a board-certified radiologist, and he's a fantasy football injury analyst and contributor over at two places, over at the Going for Two podcast and also the Baseball HQ. He's an author of a new book. The book is called Injuries Suck, but Your Fantasy Team Doesn't Have to. It's available on Amazon right now. Check it out, guys. Doc, I really want to get into this book. I really want to go into some of the details of your book because I find fantasy sports and injuries apparel just very interesting. But I just wanted to go over with you some of the particulars of the show.
Sure.
As you know, I use Fantasy Pros to do our rankings. And on that note,
I heard you've been doing okay there.
Yeah, the first couple of weeks I was an amateur, so I ended up ranking. I was first 3 out of 5 weeks as an amateur. Now that I'm actually on the expert rankings table, this week is my first week. Here, I'll tell you what, it might be better if I just show it to you. Hold on.
All right. Let's see it. Let's see the goodness.
All right.
So first three out of 5 weeks. That's I'm no expert, but that sounds like it's pretty good.
Yeah. Can you see my screen, James?
I can see your screen.
Excellent. So yeah, week one, IDP, I was a little bit down here. I think I was week 6. And then it started picking up for me come week 3, week 4, week 5. Anyway, I started picking up here around, what are we in? Week 6 now, week 7.
Yep.
So anyway, the IDP rankings, I am actually
fourth. Hey, there he is. There he is.
Yep. And believe it or not, these rankings, it's a leadership board. There's so many top people on here.
Yeah, I recognize a lot of those names, Steve. So that's pretty impressive.
Thanks. This is my first year doing it. And like I said, I've opened this show to kind of show some of those secrets, some of the things that I do. I just started doing offense, so please don't hold that against me. I just started putting that on there. But IDP's kind of my home. But yeah, I finished number 4. And if you look at the scoring, we're all about 9 or 10 points in back of each other. So, it's going pretty good with this. Let me show you this. Let me show you this too, James. So, Doc, if you look at the scoring, this is the scoring format that they use over at Fantasy Pros.
Okay.
You'll notice it's all math. Solo tackles 1.5, assisted tackles 0.75, tackles for a loss 2 points, sacks 4 points, interceptions 5, and so forth and so forth. So if you know anything, look at your scoring for your draft, and also know the general rules and guidelines, because that's going to determine how we rank these folks.
Very good advice. Which, surprisingly enough, is something that I think not enough people do. They don't look at their sky. I've been in so many leagues, even expert leagues, where people are like, "Hey, why'd you draft that guy?" And it's like, "Oh, well, he's good, right?" It's like, "Well, yeah, but in this league, they only score whatever for this, so that guy would be ranked a lot lower." And it's like, "Oh, yeah, I didn't look at that."
Yeah, and then you get stuck with your friends and recency bias and what have you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's no different over here. It's no different over here in the IDP community. And then also, you can be on top of it one week and the next week just get lit up with injuries. So this is the defensive side of the ball.
Okay.
What I generally do here is I generally do the top 15. But like I said, and then I show the audience kind of like my whole list. But we'll get into that. But if you don't mind, I wanted to ask you a couple questions about your book.
Absolutely.
Okay. Doc, what inspired you to write a book like this?
Well, I got to tell you, Steve, full disclosure, I've played in leagues that have used like team defense and special teams, but never IDP. And the reason is IDP has always been historically so intimidating to me. So I felt like if I joined an IDP league, everyone would just mop the floor with me. So I'm really glad to be here on a show dedicated to it with expert content now, not amateur content, expert content.
Oh,
So I
thank
can
you.
learn and grow in an area of the game that I'm not strong in at all. So I'm really excited to get into some of this stuff. To answer your question about the book, when I started playing fantasy football, essentially there was no injury content. There wasn't even really social media because I'm that old. You'd get a report or you get a quote on an injured player, and from the player, the coach, something like he's fine, or similar to today that he's day to day, or quote out for a few weeks, and you kind of had to make your roster decisions based off of that. So as I progressed through my medical career, I learned more about the anatomy of the body, how it functions and heals. And then I learned a lot more about imaging as a radiologist, x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs that diagnose these injuries. And that's what I do now. I'm a doctor and I specialize in radiology. So I read those images and try to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So I wrote the book to basically combine the really useful parts of my medical training and my work as a radiologist that pertain to fantasy sports. So someone could read the book or listen to the book and get the benefit of those past 20 plus years of my training and work in the medical field and my experience as a fantasy sports player, and hopefully be able to utilize that thought process and the techniques that I use every day when I'm managing my fantasy teams. And that's what hopefully we're going to explore a little bit more today on the show with some of the injured players now on the defensive side of the ball, which I'm really excited for.
Right. And then you'll notice, too, each position has different variables, different types of injuries. So I'm really excited to have you on, especially this week with bye weeks and injuries coming up. I mean, like just after you booked the show, there's been a slew of injuries, which I would hope to get into, at least the top players anyway.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I was myself. You kind of answered my next question. Tell me what inspired you to write the book, but also tell me why I would need this book. But I think an overall understanding of the body and how the body works and how much time it needs to heal, I think that would be absolutely beneficial to my team. Speaking for myself.
Yeah. Well, people might say exactly what you said. Well, Doc, why do I need to, get that? Like, why do I need to look at your content? I could just follow another injury analyst on Twitter like Stefania Bell or Jesse Morse or David Chow or Edwin Porras, and they'll tell me everything I need. And my answer to that is you absolutely should follow them. They're really smart and they're really good at what they do. But sometimes you don't have time to head to Twitter or, check out a podcast or anything like that because you need to act quick, fast, and in a hurry. Sometimes the player isn't specifically covered. And I imagine that comes up a lot on the defensive side of the ball, which in my experience seems to get a little neglected compared to offense. And you kind of get left in the lurch a little bit. So I think your audience especially is going to be interested in kind of developing their own process to be able to make more informed decisions and get a leg up on their competition. And hopefully that's why they're watching the show here, because this is not content that is available in a lot of places I found. Really, really useful.
My one friend who was talking to me offline, he works for Rotoballers. He's like, you're like Robin Hood. You're giving this information, which is usually behind a paid wall. You're giving it to the audience. I'm like, don't stroke my ego, buddy. Well, yeah. But two things that you just said that I found were very interesting. For starters, you are correct. IDP, there are a lot more injuries due to the brutality of the sport. But with every negative, there's a positive. Every yin, there's a yang. With that being said, you will find a lot more players out of nowhere, especially at linebacker throughout the season, just because it's next man up. Next man up, give me that 90% snap count guy.
Absolutely.
Give me that next man up. Nate Landon of the Falcons comes to mind right now. Isaiah McDuffie of the Packers comes to mind right now. You will get a lot of easy point weeks, and I don't think you can really do that too much with offense. So I would say
the only thing that comes to mind is running back. Running back is very much the next man up. I never heard of this guy, and all of a sudden he's a league winner type thing. But it seems like there's a lot more opportunity, to make that kind of a deal and get those potentially league winning guys on defense. Just based on what you're talking about here, it's like guys that you really have never heard of who could really be valuable to your team, which I think is really interesting.
So usually I start the show, we go off the rankings, like I said, and we start the show with defensive linemen, followed by defensive backs, followed by linebackers, excuse me. What I do is I like to research stats, but I kind of do it by position because it just gives an overall better story of the player. Like if I told you, oh, this guy had 47 tackles, okay, well, whoop-de-doo. But if I told you he had 47 tackles as a cornerback, which might be number one in his position, you'll jump for joy and pick him up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I do it. But yeah, we're going to start with defensive linemen. And if you notice with defensive linemen, usually those guys don't get 100% snaps. They're looking between 60 and 80%. And the reason is these guys get gassed quickly. They get gassed quickly, and the brutality of that position is the most severe. You'll see a lot of concussions, finger injuries, knee surgeries, pectoral strains is a common one. You'll see meniscus tears, obliques, and on that note, my first player that I'm going to talk about, TJ Watt, he's one of those such guys. He's coming off an injury, but he's one of the best at the position. For people that don't know IDP too much, usually your top players are the same names every given week. It just might flip in the order of the matchup. Mm-hmm. So for my tier one guys, I would say would either be Micah Parsons and TJ Watt. Right now this week, and you look at other rankers too, they kind of have it either or. It really is dealer's choice. It really is between these guys. These guys are the cream of the crop. The separator to me, when you look at TJ Watt, okay? When you look at TJ Watt, let me just compare him by the position he's playing. He's only got 5 tackles in the season, which ties him for 76. He's third in tackle. He has 3 tackles, which is tied for 53rd. Where TJ makes his money is the next 2 categories, which is sacks. He's tied for second with 8, and he's tied for forced fumbles. He's tied for second. That's where TJ makes his money as a sack machine, okay? The thing about TJ, he has the better matchup between the two. I was looking at some data earlier today. He's playing the Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence is actually under the most pressure in the entire league. You probably don't see it in the sack line, but that line is just not doing him any favors. And TJ Watt is a player that can get to him. And the Steelers are a top 10 team at creating pressures. So that's kind of, maybe that's a cute little statistic, cute little nugget to throw during the week, but that's kind of why I put Watt ahead of Parsons. Like I said, a couple rankers have it a little bit different, but that's why I'm going with TJ over Mr. Parsons. They're both elite. They're both elite at their position. One of the stats I like to pull as well, if you're new to IDP, ESPN has this at advanced metrics, and it's wins, losses at the position. Okay. So when I compare the two, Micah Parsons, 96 plays, he won 28 of them. Okay. He's got a 29% win rate. To break down that number and give it a little bit more flavor, the average player, defensive lineman, it's 8% is about the average.
Oh, wow. So
yeah, anything over 12,
4 times the average.
Anything over 12, 15 is a good player.
Wow. So
really you got a couple guys in here that are just beasts. Like if we were building the Madden team, that's how we would do it.
Okay.
And how you get these numbers, you put the top players, based on X amount of percentages, and you go through and you put all their numbers in there, you'll see a common theme, like which ones win more often than not. That's where that 8 to 12 comes from. But yeah, Micah Parsons could be number 1 here. And TJ Watt is pretty close too with this win-loss percentage thing as well. So Watt's down here at 22, Parsons here at 29. They're both really good players. The only difference is I'm gonna give it to Watt this week on the matchup.
Okay.
My next tier, and these guys, this is all a track meet. These are all fast, furious, great players. Okay. For number 3 on my list, I'm going Myles Garrett. For number 3, Myles Garrett. I don't know. Did you happen to watch football this week and see what he did?
I know he had a monster game.
Ooh, did he? Let me pull that up for you. So Myles Garrett, hold on. This is worth talking about. He just went off on the competition. he went and did. Well, actually, you know what? Let me pull his regular notes. Okay, so Myles Garrett this year has 11 total solos. That's tied for 34s. He's third in assists, tied for 53. Just like the men in front of him, he makes his money on the sack.
Mm-hmm.
He's tied for second with 8 with Watt. So that's where he makes his money.
Yeah.
Forced fumbles, he's got 3. So he's tied for first. Now, this week, it changes week to week with these guys. But as we get more and more data, you're seeing them change. Myles Garrett this week, 9 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. Depending on what kind of scoring format you're in, that's a league winner.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Myles Garrett is second on my list with a 27% win rate, 78 plays, 24 lines of scrimmage. So really, you can argue those 3 guys. You really could. The only difference is the first 2 are off-ball linebackers versus the next part of this list. These guys are more so true defensive linemen.
So I was going to ask you about that because I'm noticing that some of these guys have dual position eligibility. They're eligible at linebacker and defensive end. As somebody who doesn't know as much, doesn't know that much at all as far as the differentiation between those, is there a significant advantage to having guys that are multi-position eligible or eligible at linebacker versus defensive end? Like if you had a guy that was eligible at both, where would you play him?
There is. Now, excellent question. It all comes down to our scoring format. So remember, we're in Fantasy Pros. When you see solo tackles are 1.5, assisted tackles are 0.75, okay? So I get a lot more value chasing guys that are tackle savvy, chasing guys that are in linebacker spots, that they're just going to be hovering. So that's kind of why you see a lot of off-ball guys. If you can play a linebacker in a defensive lineman spot, you win.
Okay.
You win.
Gotcha.
And with IDP, it's so much easier to game a system like this. And I've been successful so far, so I can say a tackle savvy league, I can gauge each year who your tackle players are. You kind of know at 3-5 years, you know who the former Shaq Leonard is, or currently now the Roquan Smiths or the Olakuns. Like each year, you can kind of know where they're at, and you can kind of guess where their snaps are. But what you can't do, Doc, is it's impossible to gauge sacks, and it's impossible to gauge interceptions. Sack-heavy leagues is a little more trickier.
Gotcha. Okay.
You'll see certain players on this list that are way down, and people are like, why? Because it's the format. The format here, we're trying to chase the tackles and the sacks. We're trying to chase the sacks with the tackles, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
So off-ball linebackers are key to most of our sleeper formats. Moving on to number 4 on this list. Hold on, let me pull that back up there. Yep, moving on to number 4 on this list is Max Crosby. Honestly, any given week, he can be number 1 too. Where Max Crosby makes his money is he is incredible with the snap count. Doc, remember at the beginning I was telling you the average defensive lineman gets about 60 to 80% of snaps?
Yep.
Okay, Max Crosby. Let's pull up some data on Max Crosby. I realize there's some people that may not see my book, so I'm just going to go ahead and speak it. Max Crosby each week is a freak of nature. Week 1, he generated 98% of snaps.
Oh, my God.
I know. Week 2, 91% of snaps. Week 3, 95. Weeks 4 through 6, 100%. And week 7, he decided to take a little break on us. He only gave us 97%.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
he's an Iron Man.
You don't see that too much. You don't see that too often. You see these guys come off the field for like nickel and dime downs. You see these guys come off. So if you see a guy above the average, above the benchmark I said, that's crazy. So for that alone, he's valuable. Usually I will argue the top 3 before Myles Garrett went off is Crosby, Watt, Parsons. Those other 2 have an advantage because they get moved around all the time. For Crosby, he's a straight hands in the dirt, defensive end. He goes after it. But let me tell you what he did with his time. With all of those snaps, he has 21 tackles. That's tied for 3rd at his position.
Okay.
He's got 12 assists, which is number 1. And he's 7th in sack. He's 7 sacks, so that ties him for 6th.
Wow.
I don't know how you are, but I'm a numbers guy. I really enjoy looking at stuff like that. because when you look at the numbers, it really tells you who the player is. So he is good at tackles, but he's even better at assists. So what does that tell you? He's helping his team out. He's a team player. Definitely keep a guy like that in the field, right? Definitely helping out his brothers and sisters on the field.
Absolutely.
Those are your usual players. Those are the usual ones you usually see. Now, when we go down to the rest of this list, when we go down and we're looking, all these guys too have a case to be in tier 1, but it's just a tiny list. This guy here, Daniel Hunter. A lot of folks don't know Daniel Hunter because he gets hurt in most seasons. He's kind of quiet. He's over there in the Vikings. Okay. But Daniel Hunter is a baller. If you ever look at Daniel Hunter in real life, he's built. He's a built machine just like Myles Garrett. He just doesn't get any of the attention. Let me show you some of his stats, okay? When you look at Daniel Hunter for the Vikings, okay, you will see he is tied for 9th in solo tackles with 18. He comes over there and helps everyone else with assists with 7. He's tied for 11th. This guy is number 1 in sacks, and no one ever talks about him as a top 5.
This is honestly the first that I'm hearing his name mentioned. That's something, and he's only number 5 on the list, but that's pretty impressive.
And then I don't understand why some players, maybe it's the revenue, like different town. Like if he played in New York or something, he'd probably get more popularity.
Yeah, for better or for worse, right?
And then his snap percentage, he usually hovers around 70-80%. So the last 3 weeks, let's go off of 77% snaps against Kansas City, Chicago 85%, San Francisco 89%. Okay. So he's always there for you. He's a dependable player, just like the other 2 guys in this tier, Nick Bosa and Aiden Hutchinson. Honestly, when you look at his numbers, that's why I got him a little bit ahead of theirs. They're not really lighting it up like they have in years past. Let's look at Nick Bosa, okay? So Nick Bosa I'm probably going to get drugged for this, Doc. Okay? Nick Bosa is everybody's darling.
Yeah.
He's 38th in sacks right now. He's only got 3.
Okay.
He's got 12 tackles, tied for 30th. 53rd, tied for the 3 assists, tied for 53rd. Okay.
Now, why do you think he's off to such a slow start? Did he hold out in the beginning of the year? I seem to remember something like that. Do you think that has something to do with it?
And it very well might be, but I'll tell you what. Numbers wise, metrics wise, I use ESPN analytics, but I also use Next Gen Stats a lot because it tells you a lot about just the athlete and the player. He's up there with these guys with win percentages. He's had 128 plays. He won 27 of them. He's been double teamed a lot. There's your answer. 29% of the time he's double teamed. There it is. But he has a 21% win rate regardless. So I guess everybody knows this guy. They're coming after him. Here's the problem with IDP. You can have a favorite player and you can have them targeted. And if the offense game schemes around them and they get double teamed, and then you're off. You're off. You can forecast this like a fisherman, perfect weather, and then thunderstorm hits. So it's fun, but it's also frustrating at the same time.
So, Steve, I got a question for you. It looks like his snap share in the beginning of the year, at least first 5 weeks, it was kind of between 50 and 80%. He had a couple of – they were all below 80%. His first week, 56%. Every week up until week 6 is below 80%. Then weeks 6 and 7, 89% and 91% respectively snap share. So do you think that's potentially a sign that he's like starting to, kind of shake off the rust from the holdout and all that other stuff, and maybe he's starting to ramp up a little bit? Or do you think that might have just been game script and it's kind of an anomaly?
Honestly, it's a little bit of both. And here's the kicker. A couple weeks ago, I was talking about chalk it up as an anomaly. These are our players, right? A couple guys in our audience had a great point. A couple comments. Usually when you see a player, and you'll see one later, it's going to be Ernest Jones on my list. Okay. When you see a player get reps and all of a sudden they just lose them. Yeah. Then they come back to 100%. The big question mark generally is, not always, but generally an injury of some sort. Yeah. He's probably dealing with that. And if you look at, while you were asking that, I was looking up some of Nick Bosa's common injuries. He suffered an ACL tear in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So, it could be the extent of injuries. It could be they're just trying to keep these guys fresh.
Gotcha.
I'd hate to lose a player like that of that magnitude so quick in the season, especially when they're running up on teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, here is the DL list. Okay, you got, as I said, you got T.J. Watt number 1, you got Micah Parsons number 2, Miles Crosby number 3, Miles Garrett number 3, Max Crosby number 4, Daniel Hunter number 5, Nick Bosa number 6, Aiden Hutchinson number 7. Now for my bottom tier, my tier 3, this is where I get a little bit spicy. This is where I really got to put my thinking hat on, because generally most weeks those guys are on everybody's radar. Everybody knows those are good players. So the first guy I'm gonna talk about is Josh Allen of the Jaguars. He's another player. Well, let's just go there. Seven sacks. He's tied for 6th. 13 solo tackles, tied for 22nd. 3 assists, tied for 53rd position, and 2 forced fumbles, tied for 2nd. So he's another player in my top 6 who gets sacks and forced fumbles. He's another player that wins a lot of his win percentages. He plays in a smaller market. A lot of people don't know about him. Mm-hmm. Okay. Number 9 is Brian Burns. Okay. Brian Burns, to me, it feels about right to put him number 9. It really does. He's got a good matchup against the Texans this week. The numbers look really good on that. He's had 18 pressures this year on the quarterback. This Texans team, their O-line's not good at all. If you look at the ESPN analytics, he's always winning too. He's always winning 124 plays, 33 wins. He wins about 21% of the time. So that's almost a quarter of the time that this guy's winning. And he's got the 6th win percentage out of all these guys I described. So he's 27th right there. So put it all together, you pull his numbers. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do that, in fact. Let me go over to fantasydata.com, and I'll bring the audience with me in a second. I'm just explaining for those that can't see what I'm doing. Okay. All right. You should see my screen, fantasydata.com.
I see it.
This is a place I go to just to get cheap, quick stats. Okay.
All right.
Brian Burns. Okay. When we look at Brian Burns on the season, okay, this is his season, Doc. Okay. I'm going to look strictly at sacks. At Atlanta, he had 2 sacks. Week 2, nothing.
Okay.
Week 3, 1 sack. You see the pattern. Week 4, goose egg. Week 5, 1 sack. Week 6, nothing. Okay. So what do we know about him? He's good every other week, right?
That's what it looks like.
It does. So if I'm not a betting guy by no means, but if I'm a Vegas guy, okay, every other week this guy's good. Here he is, a top win percentage. Here he is, one of the top guys in sacks. He's going against a really sweet matchup where the offensive line doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, some circumstantial evidence there to maybe take a shot. So I like it.
Exactly. Now my number 10, I'm still going a little deep here. I'm going with Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips, he's coming off an injury as well. He actually put up last week. He had a 7 tackle performance. He actually had a sack as well. He had a tackle for a loss, and he did all this. Remember our metrics. 69% snap count rate. Okay, I will take him this week against the Patriots. Here's a fun fact for you. Okay, I was over on PFF the other day. The Patriots have the 3rd worst graded offensive line. You know how they do it, like the players green, red?
Yeah.
4 out of 5 of their players were red on the offensive line. Only 1 was green.
That doesn't sound good.
I hope they figure out which guy they want to block, because Jalen Phillips for top 10, that feels kind of good to me.
I like it.
All right. And like a lot of it's guessing, but it just makes sense to me to put Phillips and then after him Reddick. Hassan Reddick had a slow start to the year, but if you look at this guy, he's had 5 sacks in the last 4 games.
I'm still I'm still seeing Brian Burns up here. So let's go back to your list.
Okay. Yeah. Let me go and, matters of fact, since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and pull Hassan Reddick while we're at it. Okay. Hassan, let me just do Reddick. My spelling isn't the greatest. I know you're a doctor, so I'm trying not to
The
embarrass myself.
beautiful thing about being a doctor is you don't have to have good spelling because our handwriting is so bad, nobody can read it anyway.
That's funny. I thought it was penmanship.
It's all of it. You should see some of the scripts that I used to write. They were borderline illegible.
Can you see my game log?
Yeah, I can see it. Hassan Reddick.
So he started off slow this year. A lot of players got put off. A couple of leagues I'm in, they even dropped them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at after week 5, 6, he's been on. If you go back to week 4, the Commanders game is when he generated his first sack against that terrible line.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at 2.5, 2, 3, he's on a hot streak. So he has had 5.5 sacks in the last 4 games.
I mean, looks like he's really getting after the quarterback pretty good.
I mean, and simply put, yeah, it's hard not to put him in anyone's top 10. I have him slightly out of that right now, just a little bit. And then these next guys here, either one could win with Sweat, Chris Jones, Sam Hubbard. These guys are at the bottom of lists, at the bottom of tiers, excuse me. They both got sweet matchups. Denver, San Francisco's giving it up to the defensive end. A matter of fact, let me talk to you about Sam Hubbard, okay?
And we're talking Montez Sweat, not Josh Sweat, right?
Yes. So the way I have this tier 3 broke down, number 8 is Josh Allen. Number 9 is Brian Burns. Number 10 is Jalen Phillips. Number 11 is Hassan Reddick. Number 12 is Montez Sweat. After this, we start looking at bargain players. When I get to Sam Hubbard, number 14, this is a bit of a bargain deal. I don't know if you know who Sam Hubbard is.
I do now.
Okay, I'm going to explain. The Bengals are really a unique system the way they run. You have a guy named Trey Hendrickson who he's a sack monster, but he doesn't get anything in tackles. Okay. And you have Sam Hubbard, who's more of a tackle guy, and he'll get you a sack once in a while. So you have a Ferrari and a Volkswagen. You got a Ferrari, whatever. You got the Volkswagen. Volkswagen will get you home once in a while. Mm-hmm. You know, gas tank will get you home. Will get you to work, right? Yep. Now, in sack-heavy leagues, Trey Hendrickson, he's probably a top 15 player. Sure. Leagues like this, he's probably not even top 40 on our list because he doesn't get us tackles.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Players move up and down. Now, here we have Sam Hubbard.
Know your scoring system, folks. Know your scoring system.
Thank you. So, Sam Hubbard, okay, here's my reasoning for Sam Hubbard because people look at this and they're like, good grief. Good grief. Meatloaf again. Like, this guy, there's nothing really interesting about him. But let me explain. He has 18 tackles on the season. That's tied for 9th at his position. Mm-hmm. That's decent. He's got 11 assists. He's tied for 2nd at his position. Team player, that's decent too. He's only got 3 sacks, okay? Sam Hubbard, he's going up against the 49ers. You would think the 49ers are an elite team, not at defensive end. They're ranked 15th. So they're middle of the pack. So what do we have here? We have a player who's probably middle of the pack himself, 9th in tackles, 11th in assists. He'll get you a sack every other week, and he's playing the 15th best position. I mean, you can't really do wrong putting him as your 14th, 15th lineman a week, but that's how I justify it. He'll get you good but not great stats. I mean, that's
Steve, I have a question for you as far as the process. I don't know if you heard about this yet, but Brock Purdy apparently developed some late concussion symptoms, and they put him after the game on the flight home apparently, and they put him in the concussion protocol. Most likely, Brock Purdy is not going to be available for the 49ers this week unless he kind of is in, the upper percentage of players. Most of them miss at least a week. And we have Roshan Johnson. We're still waiting for him to come back and practice again. It's been 2 weeks, so no guarantees there. But it looks like Sam Darnold's going to get the start now for the 49ers. So does that alter your process at all as far as Sam Hubbard now going up against not Brock Purdy, but Sam Darnold maybe squeaking out another sack or two in addition to all those tackles that he's projected to get?
Honestly, they're similar type players. Like I don't care who the 49ers have in there, a game manager, that sort of thing. They'll get
neither does Kyle Shanahan. As long as it's not Trey Lance, he doesn't care who it is.
Right. And I hate to sound like that. That sounds so negative, but that's my personal opinion on Brock Purdy. Now, newsflash, guess what? Brock Purdy this year has what was he ranked? I think in 12. He's in the top 12, top 14. He's a startable player. He's been putting up stats.
I think he's right now. He's quarterback 14 or 15, something like that.
So just to me, the eye test, they're kind of similar base players. I'm not worried about it. Either one, Hubbard can eat on. I'm not worried.
Gotcha.
It doesn't change my assessment either way.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know.
So this last guy is a bit controversial. Okay, I'm gonna explain this to you. Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams has only a half a sack this season. He's a Jets defensive tackle. Most people don't have the balls to put him here. I'm putting him here.
Okay.
This is a leadership board. This is a scoring challenge. I got some steady picks here. I need to try to see if I can hit lightning in a bottle.
Got it.
What's that?
I said got it. So this is your shot. This is your shot to hold on to that number one expert ranking.
Trying. So Quinnen Williams is going against the Giants. What do we know about the Giants? They're a soft matchup. Soft as butter. They give up the second.
You know that offensive line isn't very good.
Terrible. You got Quinnen Williams, who's an actual beast. If you were to pull up his analytics, he gets double teamed 70% of the time. That's just how the position is. But 116 plays, he actually wins 19, so he's in the 16th percentile. So he's above average. So what do we have here? We got a player who hasn't really scored at all this year, okay? He's a top player going up against a soft matchup. He's also got, a lot of people don't pay attention to the advanced analytics. He also has 25 pressures this year. 25 pressures. I think he's going to get not just one, but two. Heck, let's get Froggy, maybe even three against the Giants. I mean, that would be exciting, but I think this is the week where he gets it.
That would be pretty nice.
Think of like a Khalil Mack week, like he only has like one or two good games a year, and then boom, all of a sudden he's relevant, you know. Doc, we actually got a question last week. I was saving it for you because I knew you were coming on the show.
Okay.
This one here comes from a Mitchell Heigl. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Mitch. And I appreciate all your support in the comments. Feel free to leave comments, and we'll talk to them from time to time. But he enjoys the show. He enjoys the rankings, and he was a little bit curious about Rashad Gary. Rashad Gary did not make my top 15 this week.
Okay.
Eventually he will, but he feels like it's a bit low. Coming off the injury he did, what are your thoughts on Rashad Gary?
So Rashad Gary, the linebacker from Green Bay?
Yeah, but see, in IDP, we can play him as a defensive lineman.
Oh, great. Okay, so defensive lineman and linebacker. So he tore his ACL back in November of 2022, and August was 9 months recovery, which is kind of the benchmark for when NFL teams will let a player come back from an ACL injury. September was 10 months out. He played in week 1. I mean, the guy, made it back, and snaps by week. This is what I'm noticing. And you tell me what you think about this. Mm-hmm. Week 1, 16% snap share. Week 2, 28%. Week 3, 38%. Week 4, 25%. Week 5, 47%. Has the bye week 6. Comes back week 7. Now he's at 69%. Nice, right?
Yes.
So comes out of the bye with that number right where we want it to be. Between would you say the benchmark was between 60
anything between 60 and 80 is very successful.
60 and 80%. So we're seeing this upward trend. So I think it's very interesting that we're seeing that, and that he's kind of getting his legs back under him, so to speak. So I really do like the chances that, this guy's a former first round pick back in 2019. We know he's a solid player. It looks like he might be getting his legs under him a little bit. So this might be the time where he kind of, takes off a little bit. So that's what I'm seeing. What do you think?
So here's the interesting thing about Gary. And thanks, Mitch, for this comment. And for the audience that is paid subscribers, those that are looking at home, I'm going to go ahead and scroll through my defensive lineman rankings as I'm talking about Gary. So you guys are welcome to look just to see what I have. Now, granted, you guys know this is Wednesday. It's only Wednesday. So you know that my rankings are going to change here and there. But you're welcome to look and see what I have and compare it to yours. Here's the thing about Gary. Hold on, let me multitask here at the same time. Here's the thing about Gary, okay? He's an absolute machine. He has a 33.3% win rate.
That's pretty good.
I say it again, 33.3% win rate. He beats all of these other guys. He just doesn't have the major snaps to really take notice. He's been getting, you just eloquently put all of his snaps out there in the audience, right? Hasn't really been getting the snaps except for last week. He already has 4.5 sacks on the season. Okay? The only thing holding him back is a modest snap count, which we've seen. So for anybody like Mitch who's predicting Gary breakout, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. In fact, I actually see that too. I just don't see it this week. I think it's a little too premature. I think it's a little too premature to kind of value a guy with no snaps at all. But yeah, he went from 47% of snaps week 4 all the way up to 68 week 6, and it keeps growing. So I don't see a reason not to hate on Gary. In fact, many places I actually picked up Gary in quite a few spots in hopes for the end of the year. He can finish in the top 10 easy.
Yeah.
Top 5
betting on the come a little bit. And now it's the time to jump in and grab him before he really, explodes potentially.
Right. So that's my opinion on our defensive linemen. I think we got a really good shot at it. We're gonna move on to defensive backs.
Okay.
Now, full disclosure, my audience.
Full disclosure, you love defensive backs, right?
I hate them. I see. You know what I was going to say. I hate them. First off, it's volatile. It's like, well, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. It's like Bitcoin. You just don't know. You know what you're going to get. And then not only is it volatile, each year, go back in the last 20 years. Very rarely do you have a highest leader every year. It's not as traditional as a linebacker or even defensive. Like defensive linemen, I can easily in my sleep shoot out the top 7. Defensive backs, this is a quagmire if there ever was one. You just don't know what you're going to get from week to week. So this is where I'm going to start. Tier 1, I have Cameron Curl and Cameron Bynum. For those that don't know who Cameron Bynum is, it's a classic example of why you punt defensive backs, because you get guys off waivers each year that turn out to be studs, okay? Cameron Bynum, let the stats tell the story, okay? You're like, who's Cameron Bynum, right? Let me tell you who Cameron Bynum is. He has 51 tackles on the year. You already guessed it. For a defensive back, he's number 1 at his position. Interceptions, he's got 2. That's good enough, tied for 5th. He's been targeted on. So that means teams actually throw the ball on him 34 times. He's ranked 1st. Receptions allowed. Out of those 34, he's given up 29, so he's tied for 2nd. So what do we have here, Doc? We have a player who gets a lot of tackles because teams are targeting him a whole heck of a lot. And guess what? You don't want the Deion Sanders, the Sauce Gardners. You don't want those guys. You want the DJ Reed or the Donald Brown. You want guys like that are going to get targeted each week and get peppered. This guy here, and I'm seeing it more and more, him climb up the chart. I wanted to put him number 1. He's been number 1 all 7 weeks this year. I wanted to put him number 1. I can't do it. Cameron Curl is the truth. PFF, Next Gen Stats, they rave about this guy. He's got a rivalry game coming up against the Eagles. I always put Cameron Curl in my top 3 or 4, and he rarely disappoints. Let me give you some data on Cameron Curl. He had a slow week last week, so we're not going to hold that against him. 100% of snaps, 100% of snaps, 100% of snaps, 100% of snaps, whole season, okay? Going down. 10 tackles, 9 tackles, 6 tackles, 12 tackles, 7 tackles, all the way down, okay? He's only got 1 sack on the year, but that's not really his game, okay? His game, no interceptions either. His game is straight tackles. He's going up against the Eagles who, guess what? Newsflash, they like to throw the football. Cameron Curl is going to be involved this week. Either one of those guys I can see finishing top 2. Moving on to tier 2, okay? And these are kind of repeat offenders every week. I'm not going to really spend too much time talking about Antoine Whitfield, okay? Every single week, he's in this conversation. Every single week, Winfield is probably your starting tier player. Last week was no different. He had 7 tackles last year in last game in a forced fumble. Okay, he's a really I don't know how many times you can say a really good player, but when you look at his data, playing from a free safety position, he almost plays like a strong safety. When you look at his data is really strong for the season. 30 solo tackles, no interceptions, but 16 targets, 8 receptions allowed. Any given week, he could succeed, or the next man, Mika Fitzpatrick. Okay, either one of those guys. Actually, Antoine Winfield, Mika Fitzpatrick, and Dax Hill. You could rotate those around 3, 4, and 6 for me. 5, I got Derwin James. Derwin James used to be my top player. He's probably one of my favorite players. I got to be mindful of these injuries. I got to be mindful of the matchups. So I'm sliding him down just a little bit this week. But again, you're not wrong if you are playing Cameron Curl, number 1, Bynum, number 2, Winfield, number 3, Fitzpatrick, number 4, Derwin James, number 5, and Dax Hill. That's the cream of the crop. Where the list gets a little bit sneaky, where this list gets a little more sneaky is when you get to the tier 3 players.
I see a big tier 3 here.
Because it can go either way. It really can. The top of the list for me is Jalen Petrie, who's kind of running off of injuries himself, but he's got a fairly good advantage this week. It's a plus matchup in my opinion. Okay, it's a fair advantage. Whatever you want to say. Jalen Petrie, he's back from a bye week. Okay, I'm firing him up in lineups everywhere I can.
Okay.
Petrie's going up against the Panthers. We say no more right there. We know the Panthers have been bad. Petrie will see more opportunities in both the run and the pass game, all over the field. I'm starting with confidence. He's playing that position, and he kind of moves down in the box, and that's kind of a sneaky metric to look at. If you're looking for a defensive back, James, the 2 things I look for, Doc, are do they play in the box? Are they getting tackles, and are they getting thrown on? Because if I have those 3 things going for me, they don't even have to be a star athlete like you're about to see in a couple spaces down. They don't have to be a star athlete. If they're just playing that position that way, they're going to end up getting points. In this case, we know Petrie's a baller. I expect him to get on track this week against the Panthers.
So quick question for you, Steve. For somebody who doesn't really know the numbers as well when it comes to defensive back like myself, when you look at targets and you look at pass coverage percentage, like what are some good benchmarks for like what's a good number to say, okay, this guy's getting targeted a decent amount, but he's not giving up a lot. He's making tackles and he's not giving up a lot of receptions.
Yeah, so good question. So usually what I'll do is I'll look at the average. Like each year in the NFL, if you've noticed in the last 3-4 years, the passing average goes up. Mm-hmm. So player Steve Atwater right now would probably be in the middle of the pack. They just don't throw it up back then as they do now.
Yeah.
Just like it's kind of silly to compare like Terry Bradshaw or Joe Namath to Kirk Cousins. It's kind of impossible to do. But to answer your question, for me, if I know a player is getting targeted 10 times a game and he's making 8 of those tackles, that's 8 points I can rely. Well, at least in our scoring format, this is giving us 1.5 a tackle. That's very generous.
Yeah.
1.5 a tackle, times that by whatever, you're making some volume.
Yep.
So this is kind of gaming the system a little bit. We're not really ranking them based on the best players. We're ranking them more so on who's available, who's getting hit. And passing catches allowed, I'm looking for around 10, 8 to 10. If I see it, those are good points for me. The other thing I haven't really mentioned is snap count over here, because I don't really care for defensive backs. Mm-hmm. Everybody on this list has a common trend. They're all getting 90 to 100% of snaps, every single one of them. Or you're not on my list. I'm putting you all the way down the list. I don't want to take a chance with a guy that I don't know. I don't want to take a chance with it. Why would I? So that's why I have them where I do. This next one you're going to enjoy. This next player I have, his name is Julian Blackman. Okay? He is not an athlete. You will see him get beat on the field as much as possible. But you know what makes him special? The Colts defensive scheme. The Colts defensive scheme is amazing for that position. So what they do is they move their strong safety into the box. A lot of guys call that the sweet spot because now you're playing another linebacker, okay? Okay, everybody says that, but what does that actually mean? Okay, this guy here, 230 of his plays this year, he has played from the box safety role. 230 snaps this season, okay? he's got a matchup against Derek Carr, who we know is king of short throws.
Yeah,
Checking
absolutely.
it out, right? He's going to do it. So this guy's in a position to make plays all game, okay? Now, last but not least, let's talk about his stats, okay? Because an average player can be in the position, but is he going to do anything with it? Well, so far this season, he has 38 solo tackles. That's good for fifth at his position. Fifth at his position, I got him ranked 7th. So something's not right in this scoring system, right? 21, 2 interceptions. That's tied for 5th, right? 24 targets. To answer your question, so that's what, 3 or 4 a week. That's good. Tied for 8th. So that's pretty good, getting targeted that much. And then receptions, at those 24, he's giving up 18. So that's tied for 5th. So when you put it all together, we kind of like, if we were designing a Madden football player, that's kind of what I want. I kind of want a guy who's going to be lingering around, making the play, making the tackle, generating stats. This guy by default is going to make someone's top 10. I just so happen to put him at 8. Okay. Moving on. And I don't know if you'd like to elaborate on this injury as well, but Budda Baker got hurt. He got hurt. Actually, this is a good one for you, actually, Doc. We got Budda Baker at 8, and then we got Jamal Adams at 13. Both of these guys are coming back off of hamstring injuries, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if they're lingering, but it didn't look like it on the field. These guys here are going to be stepping up. They're going to be in the top 15 conversation every week. It's just a question of, as we go through the season, how many more snaps are they going to get? Jamal Adams had 85% of snaps last week, which kind of hurts my Julian Love shares. But Baker, they're taking a little bit of a different approach with. With Budda Baker, they threw him in there and he got 100% of the snaps.
Yep.
100%, 6 tackles, boom. So that tells us something. There's a clue. They don't really think it's a big deal. They don't think it's lingering and bothering. But I was asking you, just as a sports doctor specialist, hamstring injuries lingering. What are the pros and cons there?
Yeah, well, the thing, anytime you have an injury to muscles, tendons, ligaments, there's grades, and depending on, and I'm sure anybody that's played or listened to any injury analysis for any length of time know the main grades: grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. So what does that mean? It means on imaging, can you actually see a tear in the structure? So you get an MRI, do you actually see the structure is torn or not? So if it's completely torn, that's a grade 3. Usually those players need surgery. Grade 2 means there's a partial tear to the structure, which is worse than a grade 1, where you can see that there's an injury, there's some swelling around it, there's some swelling in the tissue, but it's not actually torn on the imaging. So big difference there. And when you hear a grade 1 versus a grade 2, that's really a differentiator. Grade 1 injuries are ones that guys can kind of gut it out, the old rub some dirt on it and, give it a week or 2 to heal, and they usually can play through it. When you have a partial tear, that really ups the ante. Those are when you have grade 2 injuries. Those are when guys usually hit the IR. If they come back too early, that can make it worse. And then they can be out even longer. So those can be, 3, 4, 5, sometimes up to 8-week injuries. So those are just kind of like rough timetables. But as you talked about with Budda Baker, it looks like he missed 5 weeks. So they put him on IR once he got injured, and it looks like he's back, and it looks like he's doing okay. 100% snap share leads me to believe he's feeling pretty good and he's healed up. So that's a good sign for me.
Excellent. So just to go down this list here, and got a couple questions from the mailbag. We put absolutely. Cameron Curl number 1. Cameron Bynum, number 2. Maybe because I just like that name. Maybe I'm just a Cameron. I'll put okay. So Antoine Whitfield, number 3. Mika Fitzpatrick, number 4. Derwin James, 5. Dax Hill, 6. Good list. And here we go. Jalen Petrie at 7. Julian Blackmon, 8. Budda Baker, 9. When I get to Javon Holland, I kind of am hesitant. I want to kind of move him up a little bit. But a couple weeks here and there, you're going to have your spotty weeks. I like Holland this week. He's going up. He's going up against the Patriots, who have allowed the second most points per game to opposing defenses. I'll elaborate down a little later, but like that's a really good matchup. He can eat from there. Number 11, Jesse
So
Bates.
let me just interject there real quick, Steve. One thing you want to be concerned about with Javon Holland is you see the red Q next to his name. So why is that? He actually picked up a concussion on Sunday, and he's now in the concussion protocol. So that definitely raises the question of, is he going to be able to progress through the concussion protocol enough to be available for Sunday? He didn't practice on Wednesday. So that's definitely not great. Like, in order to clear the concussion protocol, you have to make it back to practice, and you have to be able to participate fully in practice before you'll be cleared. So as the week progresses, if you see that he's back at practice and he practices fully, good sign he's going to be available. If you don't see that, pretty good sign that he's not going to be available on Sunday. So definitely a wait and see, wait, watch and see on him.
Great point. Great point. And a little trivia for the audience. We do these IDP rankings so early in the week. We don't always catch the injuries, what have you. Usually I don't start panicking. I mean, I got the sports doctor on today, so we're talking rankings. We're talking injuries. I don't start panicking until I see Thursday, Friday. If I see that doubtful, I don't know if you guys know, so I'm just going to put it here just in the broad audience. They did a statistic, 93.7, if I got that right, 93.7% of players, when they get the doubtful tag, they're just out. Consider them out.
Yep.
Marshall Faulk was the last guy to come back and actually play.
That was a long time ago.
So I don't know with the leagues that I'm in, and this may be a controversial move. If a guy's doubtful, okay, that's just as good as IR. Put him on the IR. Yep. Some leagues I'm in, these guys are more sticklers, and they're like, "No, you got to wait." Okay, you're just costing me days.
It's there. I'm in those leagues too, but I'm with you. Like, as far as I'm concerned, from an injury perspective, if a guy's listed as doubtful, to me, he's as good as out. And as you alluded to, I can't remember the last time somebody was listed as doubtful and they actually played in the game. So if you're saying it's Marshall Faulk, I believe you, because I don't remember the last time it happened.
Right. I'm just gonna show the audience the rest of my list, the ones that are here and paid subscribers. Yep. So what I leave off at: Petrie 7, Julian Blackman 8, Budda Baker 9, Javon Holland 10, Jesse Bates 11, playing against Tennessee, Kyle Hamilton playing against Arizona. I like that matchup too. The Ravens lead the NFL in sacks and have more interceptions, 6, than the touchdowns that they allowed, which is 4. That's more of a matchup thing. They have 4 games this season with at least 5 sacks. They have now scored at least 11 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4. They're going against the Cardinals, who I think they have showed who they are now. I think they are starting to, pack it in for next year. So Kyle Hamilton at 12, I think that's more than reasonable. We talked Jamal Adams at 13. We talked Grant Delpit interests me, because he also gets that sweet spot position. He gets those plays in the sweet spot. He's a pretty interesting player too. If you look at his PDF or PFF rather, and you look at what he's done on the season, he's usually in a top 15 conversation. He may even make it outside of that in some occasions. But I mean, playing a Seahawks matchup, they're going to throw the ball around. He's got 32 tackles on the season. Now, here's where numbers get a little crazy. He's tied for 16th for 32. Okay, well, what if he had 42? He'd be right up there with the top players at this position, right? So, give or take 1 or 2 more tackles a game. The body of work, we still are halfway through the season here. The body of work the gap is going to change between these players, So if it's only 1 or 2, I don't really concern too much about the rank. I'm concerned about the numbers. Yeah. He's tied for 13th with 1 interception. He's been targeted on 15 times, and he's allowed 11. And this week, he made a couple of mistakes in coverage, but I'm more than okay with that. I will take a swing with Delpit. Last year, before he was even in the scheme, he had 100 plus tackles on the season. So Delpit's good. And then my one underneath it is Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith, old man Smith, he puts it up too from week to week. Honestly, any one of these players in here can do you well. Any one of these players. That's why defensive backs is so interesting, because you just never – it's like a lottery ticket. For those that like lottery tickets, I don't play scratch-offs. For those that like lottery tickets, by all means, go right ahead. Go get yourself some defensive backs this week. because there's a whole list of them once you get outside the 7 that you can choose from.
Love it.
We have an actual mailbag question here in regards to Hufanga. Why do all the analysts continue to rank Hufanga so high? He never plays close to the line of scrimmage. No way he's top 15. Believe it or not, I don't have Hufanga that high. I don't. I've been kind of putting him bottom tier. You know, he might make 15, 11, 12, 13. And, you know, the reason is recency bias. You know, he's got the hair. He looks like Troy Polamalu, right? He's on the 49ers. But in reality, trigger finger, this is a very smart question. This is a very smart question because when you do the data, it's nowhere close. No way at the most volatile position that we have in sports should we be putting Hufanga up any higher. And it's crazy. Recency bias sets in. There are so many rankers this week. He's in their top 10s. He's in their top 10s. Let me show you. He's getting 100% of snaps most weeks. Week 3, he had 1 tackle.
Week 5, he had 1 tackle.
Week 5, 1 tackle. Week 6, he got 7. Okay. Minnesota game, he had 9, but they were fighting for their lives. No, thank you. I'm not playing Hufanga or players like that. And then here's another basic strategy. You want a really good defensive back? Brisker of the Bears is a good example. Last year, he was on the field. He was amazing, right? Because the linebackers sucked so much, he had to go and soak those tackles up. This year, what happened to Brisker? You got Edwards in front, and you got Tremaine Edmonds. So he's not getting as much play as he did last year, especially with the healthy Greenlaw and a healthy Warner. So no thank you on Brisker. Thank you for leaving that comment, though, because I thought that was smart enough, and I wanted to actually make a point to use that in today's show.
Nice.
Let's move on to linebacker. I will tell you from experience, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, James. Linebacker is historically like the running back position. Okay. Not only is it often disregarded, but those guys move from side to side so much. They do a lot of ACL tears, MCLs. What thoughts do you have in regards to the linebacker position?
Well, it seems like, and I know we saved them for last, it seems like they're really important when it comes to building a defensive backfield and building your defensive lineup. I know historically, you know, what I know about them is they're the guys that, especially the really good ones, they're the ones that can kind of do it all. They go sideline to sideline. They're in on stopping the run. They're making tackles. They're getting interceptions. They're defending passes. They kind of have to do a little bit of everything. And the ones that were really, really good did a lot of bit of everything. So that's kind of what I know about it. How does that jive with the way it actually plays out?
Yeah, and you know, this is another reason I'm not very literate with medical terms and what have you, but I'm very excited to read your book because, you know, I just want to know a little more about ACL, PCL, MCL tears.
Yeah.
It seems like these guys get them very often.
Okay.
And how often that puts them out is the better question.
Yeah.
So, but okay, let me go ahead and just show you the rankings here. You have the Holy Trinity, the top 3. I don't see anybody else doing it any different with those 3. They might have them jumbled around. But those are your top 3. Okay. Right now, this year, Zaire Franklin or Foyce Olakun. Okay. One of those guys is your top 1. Every ranker probably has it that way. Every single ranker kind of has it that way. You know, dealer's choice, just like the defensive lineman. Pick your poison. Now, I'm going to tell you, I have a reason. I actually have an analytical reason why I have Franklin ahead of Olakun. So let's compare those guys together, okay? When you look at Franklin, he's got 72 solo tackles on the season, okay? That's number 1, okay? He's got 11 assists. It's tied for 29th. So you can tell a lot about a player. What kind of player is he? This guy knocks you down, you're staying down. He's a beast, right? Doesn't really make too much of the teamwork. Doesn't need it. This is what he does. This is his game. He's got a forced fumble. That's good enough for second at his position. And he also has 2 sacks. That's who Franklin is as a player right now. This is what we see, okay? Olakun, little bit different. Similar player, similar snap, green dot, 100% snaps. Again, it's a dealer's choice. But with Ulukun, he's tied for second. He's got 61 solos. So the first guy got 72 solos. Second guy got 61. Okay. This guy here is better at assists. Okay. He's got 20 assists on the season. He's got 1 INT. He's tied for sixth. Okay. So we know the players. We know who they are right now. And maybe I'm a little bit too much into my rankings per se. But based on what I just said, I'm just curious. Based on what I just said, okay, if we look at the scoring here, okay, you got one guy with 72, and you got one guy with 61. Just doing fast math, we get 1.5 for the solo, we get 0.75 for the assist. That's double. That is double every time my guy makes a solo and your guy makes an assist, right?
Yep.
It's important to know these players and schemes. It's important. So I got a guy who's a team player. Yay, good for you. But guess what? It's not going to win my fantasy week.
Right. Okay?
Let's do some fast math. Again, I don't claim to be a mathematician. So let me just see here. So if I was to do Franklin, 72 by time 105, so that's 108. 108. So there's 108. And then let's do the 0.75 assists. Okay. So Franklin would be, if we were just doing basic scoring, those two situations alone, I'm not going to put the rest of it in there because it's too fluky. Franklin has 116.25 points.
Okay. Based
on this ranking system on the season. Okay. Let's go over to Olakun with his 61. 61 tackles times 1.5. That brings me out to
90 something.
You're a doctor. Okay. I'm not as quick as you. Give me 1 second. So So 91.5. 91.5. Then we got his 220 assists, which will bring him up 0.75 to. So here it is. Here it is. Apples and oranges. Okay, pick your poison. One guy's got 116.25 on the season based on this ranking. The other one's got 106.25. That's a 10-point difference.
Yep.
That's a huge difference. Okay, if you're an assistive player and maybe I'm too far looking hard into these rankings, but that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing here.
Okay.
Between these two guys, apples and oranges. One is a true tackler, while the other one is more. And you know what, Olakun, I'll say it right now. Olakun's probably a better player. Franklin's just in a position to succeed. You know who else is a better player? Than probably maybe not both of them, but Roquan Smith. Smith is amazing, a real life player, and it's sad. It is so sad that I have him number 3, but I just can't do it. I can't find a way. I can't find a way to put him up there any higher than that. Roquan Smith. Have you seen the Ravens play lately?
I haven't seen them play specifically, but I'm very familiar with who Roquan Smith is.
Okay, so how about this? Have you seen the Ravens play last year? That defense was horrible.
Oh yeah.
Defense looks good this year, right?
Yeah.
Roquan Smith is a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. Okay. Yeah, not only is he in position, he's making players better around him. He's making people better around him. And when you make other people better around you, guess what? You lose a little bit of points here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the way it works. So something else I want to interject on with Roquan really quick. So again, we got the red Q there, which is always, piques my interest. So he's dealing with a shoulder injury. He didn't practice today. No further details on what's going on there, but definitely something that you want to watch going into practices Thursday and Friday. Sometimes it's just a veteran day off, no big deal. But sometimes these things linger. So if he's not practicing tomorrow, he's not practicing on Friday, then we got to be worried. If he's back, partially practicing, and then he elevates to a full practice on Friday, probably no big deal. But the shoulder is, one of those areas where it could be nothing. It could be a bruise and he's just getting some rest, or it could be, we're seeing like with Deshaun Watson with his rotator cuff, and, we have Deebo Samuel's dealing with a broken shoulder blade, so there are other things in there that can get hurt. That can keep you out for a little bit and hurt your performance. So just something to keep an eye on for everybody in the early part of the week going into the later part of the week.
Awesome. And then with Roquan too, every year he's historically good. 4.5 sacks, 3 out of the last 5 years. Top 3 tackler last season as well. You're not wrong to have either one of those 3. Either one of those 3 can win you a week, but that's kind of the order I have it. Franklin, Olakun, Smith. Most people do not have a problem with either one of those guys the way it's put down. Now, the rest of my list, on the other hand, you're going to see linebackers all over the place. I can justify those numbers, but they probably don't look like other ranking sites. Remember, we're chasing tackles, right? So when I put TJ Edwards that high, that's a bit risky, okay? TJ Edwards to me is a classic case of what you see on real life football is what you get in the stat line. If you're not looking at TJ Edwards or you don't know the player, let me tell you, he's got 51 solos on the year. That's tied for third. I got him fourth. He's tied for third. He's also not too bad with assists, tied for 15th. And he's number one. Actually, he's tied right now. So he'd be second right now in forced fumbles with 1. So overall, the player is really good. Week to week, the player is really good. He's got a matchup against the Chargers who kind of look lost. Here's a little fun fact, not really for the IDP show here, but for us here at IDP guys, here's a fun little fact. Their coach is calling defensive plays this week. Okay. Usually we see a trend when that happens, right? Usually the coach starts playing it and things start going bad for them. And so, he may be out the door. He may be out the door soon enough.
Okay.
But it's a very unstable situation. So, whenever there's opportunity, a guy like TJ Edwards is knocking. I got him higher than most, but that's what I'm doing. And that's what he does. And the rest of this tier, to be honest, there's not a whole lot to tell you. Okay. TJ Edwards, number 4, Fred Warner, 5, Bobby okay, I can't even say that right, so I'm gonna say Bobby O, right?
Bobby Okariki, maybe.
Yeah, Quincy Williams at 7 and CJ Mosley at 8. Those are your every week 100% snaps, 10 tackle performances. Those are the guys you kind of want. Those are the guys you want. There's not really anything exciting besides reading stat line. I generally talk them every week. What I'm more excited for is to talk the bottom tier because I usually get by this point in the program, I usually kind of graze it a little bit. Okay. There's some good diamonds in the rough. Okay. The only thing I'm going to say in this tier right now, you notice the Jets. Not only do we have 2 Jets in there, it almost looks like it's backwards, don't we? We have CJ Mosley after Quincy Williams. Mm-hmm. That seems a little bit suspicious, okay? Let's match them up a little bit because I'd like to compare them together. I'd like to compare those guys together. Okay, so CJ Mosley going against the Giants, 14th best in the matchup. They bleed to the linebacker, 43.80 points per position. So either one of these guys, possibly both, are going to eat, right? CJ Mosley, 44 solo tackles. He's tied for 8th. Quincy Williams is tied for 11th with 43. Now, here's why I kind of compared it to. Okay, one guy has 43 tackles. He's 11th. And the other one's got 44 tied for 8th. It's one friggin' tackle. Right? So the rankings, don't get stuck on the rankings too much. It's just a way to compare apples and oranges. Yeah. The assists are there. This is where Quincy excels. Quincy excels in assists. He's got 11, tied for 29th. Mosley's up there too. Okay. Forced fumbles, he's tied for 2nd. Okay. Quincy Williams is actually doing really well this year. Quincy Williams is a very good coverage player, which I was surprised to see this year. This is another case of CJ Mosley, just like the Roquan Smith mold. Both of those players, CJ Mosley's like the linchpin in a hand grenade, okay? He's the pin that makes it all work. Weeks when CJ Mosley's not in, that team does not excel. They do not.
Falls apart.
So Quincy Williams' success, owe that to the leadership around him. Because I don't see him as a CJ Mosley player. I see them as 2 opposite players, actually. But both right now are excelling in that system. Both of them are doing very well. And that's why I kind of brought him up the way I did. Okay. That ranking doesn't change. They kind of shift based on the matchup. So what do I have here? I put Franklin 1, Olakun 2, Smith 3, Edwards 4, Warner 5, Bobby O 6, Quincy Williams 7, CJ Mosley 8. This is the tier I kind of want to feast on, okay? This tier 4, tier 3. I kind of want to focus on that, okay? Okay. So we're gonna go with Bobby Wagner, okay? And I have to go to the mailbag on this one because this one kind of made me think this week, okay?
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
I see it.
What's up with Bobby Wagner? He gives up on effort on the field when he plays from time to time. And he's up and down. He keeps getting ranked in the top 8, and I just don't see it. Okay, he seems volatile. This is from Steven Smith. I thought this was a smart question. I really did. And this week I kind of looked into it a little bit. I went a little deeper than I usually would.
Okay.
I kind of went a little bit farther with Bobby Wagner. To be fair, I don't know. To be fair, I thought he was lower. I thought I had him lower than most because I was seeing Bobby Wagner as high as 4. Kind of crazy. So it made me kind of want to make myself better. And thank you for that question, Stephen, because we only get better as an audience by asking smart questions. We really do. And this actually makes us better as analysts, okay? Let's break it open. Let's break the bread open on this. So Bobby Wagner, okay? First thing that comes to mind to me, who's Bobby Wagner, okay? Well, I can tell you right now he's LB12 on the season in most formats. I can tell you right now, just watching game film, you are absolutely correct. Watching games, he's gassed by the end of the game. He is exhausted. He's missing plays that old Bobby Wagner wouldn't do. He's also 33 years old. So again, that's a good question. Why are we ranking him that way? You know, like it just doesn't make sense. So the first thing that comes to mind to me is, well, he's got 9 All-Pros. He's a Pro Bowler 8 times. You know, he's a first-time Hall of Fame. That's all in the past. What is he doing now besides getting passed? What is he doing? So I kind of looked at the numbers. So we're gonna go back to fantasy data over here, and let me know when you see Bobby Wagner. Okay.
Okay.
Just let me know. I'm digging Bobby Wagner.
Got it.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so Bobby Wagner, week 1. This is kind of where everybody's still stuck on. Week 1, he had 18 tackles. He had 8 solos and 10 assists.
Yep.
Okay. The rest of the year, if you look at it, he's hit or miss, right?
Yeah.
He comes and he goes.
Week 4 looked pretty good. 17 tackles. Let's see. Solo tackles, assists. Yeah, so he had 17 tackles, and then last couple of weeks hasn't really done nearly as well. So it looks like he's kind of streaky or boom bust, to say the least.
And you see why I think this is a smart question. It really is. So when you kind of put all this together and when you think about it, okay, you know, there's not too many players that get 100% snap counts. He's a middle linebacker. He wears the green dot. He's capable any given week to give you 17 to 20 tackles plus a big play or two, right?
Yeah.
It's not enough to justify a top 4 ranking, in my opinion, but it's enough to justify the bottom half of the list. So look at Bobby Wagner with blind spots. He's very splotchy at this point. You know, he'll have his good weeks. He'll have his bad weeks. You know, kind of like a Brian Burns. You know, it'll be up, it'll be down. So you know my process on this. That's what I'm looking for. It's just it takes older players. Well, you could testify to this, Doc. It takes older players a little bit more time to heal and to get going each week. So he's not going to
players a little bit longer to do everything, right?
So you're going to have those weeks. So if you're starting Bobby Wagner, just know that. Just know this is the player he is at this point in his career.
Okay, so I know you wanted to mention this guy. You know, as long as we're talking about Seattle linebackers, Jordan Brooks, kind of going for the Superman award this year. Tore his ACL in week 17 of January of 2023. Passed his physical in August, which was only 8 months post surgery, and then he played in week 1, which I don't think anybody would have faulted you if you thought maybe he starts the season on the pup or he starts off slow. It looks to me like his snap percentage has been between 64 and 88% this year, which seems like what you want. So any thoughts on that as far as like his standing in the rank? Oh, there he is. He snuck in there right at the end at number 15.
Yeah, I like to, my bottom of the list, I like to kind of hit like those lightning in a bottle kind of plays. But he's the only one on my list that isn't meriting the 100%, 90% kind of mark, right?
Interesting.
He had that surgery, but I think it was around 10 months ago now.
Yeah.
He came back to play, but, you know, he's just a freak. His stats on 70% of stats, he's still in the top 20 in most statistical categories. 38 solos, he's tied for 20th. 15 assists, tied for 19th. So to put him 15, 20 any given week, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. In fact, I think that's a good move.
Yeah, it looks like he's doing just fine, post ACL. So, I think what you see is, you can trust it at this point. I mean, he's I think 10 or 11 months out. So he's getting there. It looks like he's doing really well. So I like that, sneaking him in at the end, and that's why you're number one. 3 out of 5 weeks.
The other thing I like to do with the bottom of this list, you're looking for 100% players, and this is what we have. 10, we have Kaiser White. 11, we have Terrell Bernard. 12, we have Quay Walker. 13, we have Logan Wilson. Okay, you're not wrong with any of those guys right there. It's all on preference. It's all matchup based, okay? Let's talk Kaiser White. Every single week, that guy is on the radar. Every single week, this guy's making plays at this point in the season. 100% snap count the whole way through. Let's just pull what he's done recently, okay? We're going to go back. Let's do 3 weeks of data. Okay, so Kaiser White. Yeah, so Kaiser White. And just for the audience listening in, I'm just going to read some of this. Week 1, 100%. Week 2, 100%. Week 3, 100%. Week 4, 100%. See the trend? 5, 106. All of it's 100%. Every single week. The last 3 weeks, 10 tackles, 8 tackles, 5 tackles. Sacked one of the weeks. I mean, every single week he's on the field. He's a top 10 play to me this week because he's playing the Ravens. The Ravens are the second best matchup to the linebacker. They just give it up. Maybe it's Lamar trying to run around and maybe they run the ball. They just give it up. They give it up to that position. He is a solid play. He's a solid play almost every week, but he deserves that top 10. I just got a lot of high upside guys in front of him. I got guys like Wagner and what have you moving up. You know who else I put in there? If Nick Bolton was on this list, he commonly is a 4 to 7 every single week. Nick Bolton is a baller. Some people have him at 3. It's just unfortunate the timing right before we got you on the show.
Yeah.
He hurt his hip, right? What are your thoughts on Nick Bolton?
So it looks like Nick Bolton dislocated his wrist. So the issue with that is even when you put the bones back into place, when you dislocate, the bone comes out of the joint, and the joints, now it's no longer functional. So you put the bones back in place so you get the functionality back. But a lot of times when you do that, you stretch and you injure the ligaments and sometimes the tendons that are kind of holding things in place, and you need to repair and stabilize the wrist. So they're giving him an 8-week time frame at this point to kind of repair things. And I think that's a good time frame. So we're looking like we're going to be without him for probably at least the next 2 months and maybe longer. So that brings, next man up is Drew Tranquil. So what do you think about him?
I like Drew Tranquil. Every time Tranquil gets an opportunity to succeed, he does well with it. For whatever reason, the Chiefs didn't promise him a position at all. But again, whenever Bolton's out, they give him the green dot. So I don't know if they're just not telling him outright. But yeah, between him and you know what, Gay, don't sleep on Gay either. Gay's been leading the team in tackles. So I think when you put it all together, I think that Tranquil is the better, knowledgeable football IQ guy, and Gay is the better player.
So Willie Gay, the linebacker for the Chiefs.
Yeah. If you look at his weeks when he actually gets to play, he is he's very successful. Okay. So I just want to move on a little bit here. We covered Wagner. We covered White. Number 11 is Terrell Bernard. It's safe to say, guys, Terrell Bernard's a top 10 linebacker moving forward. If you don't know Terrell Bernard, most people did at the beginning of the year. Matt Milano getting hurt. It's been musical chairs. It's been a nightmare for the Bills linebacker core. It seems like Terrell Bernard got it figured out. He's having solid weeks. Let me read you some of his stats, okay? 44 solos, tied for 8th. Assists, 25, that's 5th. Interception, 2nd, tied for 1st. This guy, there's nothing wrong with playing this guy as a top 10. I have him as a top 11 because I'm chasing a little upside. He's safe. He's as safe as it can be the rest of the year. So kudos to you, smart managers, that picked him up, okay? Every format out there, pretty good. But also, the reason why Bernard is interesting to me, it's because the LB2 is non-existent, okay? All year round, from A.J. Klein to Dorian. And you know what? 2 games ago, I thought we had it figured out. I thought we figured out that Dotson is not a good player. Dorian Williams, the rookie, will play LB2. Guess what happened last week? And most people don't realize this. Last week against the Patriots at halftime, they benched Dorian Williams and they brought back in Dotson. So more to follow. That's musical chairs all single year. I don't want to get stuck with either one, but I'm more than okay with the one linebacker who's playing and getting consistent play. I'm more than okay with him.
Okay.
We're going to go back. Oh, good. I'm sorry.
No, good. I was just going to say, when we get to the end of the linebacker list, what we can do, one of the things I'm known for, going for two, is they do the rapid fire injury review. So we can kind of bang through quite a few injuries here just in the last few minutes and give people some guys to maybe watch out for in the weeks to come that they might want to put on their radar now, kind of see how they do, and then maybe add them, as needed.
Awesome. So I actually, while we were doing that, I actually was able to get on IDP Guys. IDP Guys has this cool content. They have this, we have an injury tracker too, so I can show you that when we get there. But they have this snap count creator. And what you can do is you can look at certain players.
Ooh, look at that.
We're going to go to Ernest Jones because I have Ernest Jones on the list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have Ernest Jones on the list. Okay, now while we're pulling this up, can you guys see the snap count tool?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So while we're talking about Ernest Jones, okay, let me just read you his stats as we find Ernest Jones, okay? So as you know,
there he is.
Okay, Ernest Jones this year, 48 solo tackles, tied for 5th. Assists, 19, tied for 8th. He's a very good player on a bad team, right? He also gets the Cowboys, which is the 9th best matchup, okay? It sounds too good to be true, but this is why we're analysts. Be careful. Please be careful if you're playing Ernest Jones this week. The reason I have him so low, and we kind of talked about this earlier, hopefully you can see me highlighting this. Ernest Jones is 100% ball snap player, linebacker, like the rest of this list, right? 100% week 1, 100% week 2, 100% week 3, 100% week 4. Be careful. 100% week 5. Be careful. What the heck happened week 6?
Yeah, what happened?
What happened week 7? And as my
78% week 6, 81% week 7, so a significant drop off there. So what was the deal?
As my audience correctly figured out a few weeks ago, whenever you see a player all of a sudden just dropping snaps, we chalk it up as an anomaly, but there's probably an injury there. So I went on Twitter trying to figure out what it could possibly be. He's got a knee injury. And it's in between those games, and I guess he's trying to shake it off right now. So just be careful starting players that they happen to be getting their check-in. But this is a key stat. This is why snap count is so important. You see a player that traditionally is at high and all of a sudden he goes low, that's not good. And then the next week he goes high again, it's encouraging. But if he keeps going low, it's more likely than not an injury, or he sucks. But we know, based on stats, Ernest Jones does not suck. By all means, play him. Just be mindful of that injury.
All right. Yeah, it looks like he's trying to gut it out a little bit. Kind of been partial participation in practice for the last couple of weeks. So that makes a lot of sense. So if you're okay with it, let's rapid fire some other guys, get some guys on the radar here, and then we can close it out. So one of the guys you mentioned, Quan Alexander from Pittsburgh. So lots of prior injuries, but his snaps by week, 60, 57, going up to week 5, 46% coming out of the bye, now 71%. So football, it's a brutal sport. It's a war of attrition. You got to live in the here and now. So maybe somebody, upward trend, looking good coming out of the bye. Definitely somebody that you want to keep an eye on. Reed Blankenship, safety for the Eagles. You already mentioned the volatility there. Injury to the ribs, week 6. X-rays were negative. That doesn't mean he's out of the woods. Could still have a break. X-rays, not the best for picking up rib injuries, especially if they're not displaced. They're just fractured in place. He's out for week 7. We don't know what the story is going to be there. Could be a cartilage injury. Could be weeks of him continuing to be hampered by that. Uchenna Nwosu, linebacker for Seattle. Torn pectoral, season-ending surgery. Not great news there, but here's what I want to tell the guys, especially in dynasty leagues, looking forward to next year. I did a little research. You're not the only one that can do research here, Steve. So I looked up the sports. There's an article from the Sports Health Journal 2019 demonstrated that 90% of players with torn pectorals returned post-op within 8 months, and about 75% of those returned to their previous level of functioning. I like those odds. So next year, people may be off of him because of the injury. I would definitely give him a good hard look if that's someone that you want to look at and you like the way he was playing before. Pretty good chance he's going to be able to get back there. The numbers favor it. Cody Barton, linebacker for Washington, suspected high ankle sprain. So there's been a lot of talk about high ankle sprain versus low ankle sprain. Basically, it's low ankle sprain versus other, and other is bad. So mid ankle sprain, high ankle sprain, low grade, medium grade, high grade, doesn't matter. If you hear mid grade, high ankle sprain or mid ankle sprain, you know it's bad. And this could be bad. Could be 3 to 4 weeks. Could easily linger and affect him beyond that. So be careful there. Divine Diablo. Great name, by the way. Ankle injury, severity unknown. But again, you got to watch out for, is it a high ankle sprain? Always got to be concerned with that. If you hear that that's what he's dealing with, again, 3, 4, 5 weeks, could linger longer than that. Luke Masterson seemed to be the guy that stepped up, so he could be the guy that replaces him. Definitely somebody to keep an eye on. David Long, concussion protocol. Just watch practice reports. Remember, you got to practice in full before you clear the protocol. So if you don't see him practice in full, chances are he's going to be out. Cornerback for the Las Vegas Raiders. And we got a couple more. I know you love the defensive backs, but we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Jeremy Chin. So he had a quadriceps injury. He's on IR. So what that tells me is it's probably a grade 2 injury. So again, we talked about partial tear. So probably looking at 3, 4, maybe even up to 8 weeks with that injury. So we'll have to wait and see there. Darnell Savage, another one of your favorites, the safety from Green Bay, calf injury, looking like it could be either a grade 1 or a grade 2. If it's a grade 1, thinking 2 to 4 week time frame. Grade 2 injury, again, could be 3 to 4 weeks, could be up to 8 weeks. And then we'll leave it off with, I'm going to try his name here, Frankie Louvu, the linebacker from Carolina. So he had a hip injury. There's a few things that it could be. It could be something as simple as a hip pointer, which is basically just a bruise to the area. There's cartilage in there that you can injure. It could be a muscle strain. So still, wait, watch, and see on that. And scene. How'd I do?
You did excellent. And you know what? Just to add to your Quan Alexander, we had a question in the mailbag about what about Devon White and Quan Alexander? I thought it was a sit start for a minute there. No, what Raven was asking was, why don't they make the top 10? And that's a good question. I think this is a smart question too. Quan Alexander, let's look at the data real fast. 69% week 1, 60% week 2, 65. He drops to 38% snap share. You see why I don't put these players on? They're 2 hit or miss. 44 the next week, 69. That's why Quan Alexander, and he had a great start of the year. I believe he was like 4th in tackles from start of the year. It's 2 hit or miss when you're trying to play a player who's only 1 or 2 downs. And then I wanted to actually hit on Devin White. Now, believe it or not, I heard that he has a foot injury.
Yeah.
I can't confirm or deny the significance of that, but I can confirm and deny he's not good this year. Devin White is one of those face names that everybody thinks. Everybody was excited. Week 1, he had a 12 tackle performance. Let's look at week 2, 2 tackles. Week 3, 7. Week 4, 5. Week 6, 7. Week 7, 5. For a guy getting 100%, that's ho-hum. Now he's not on my top 15. So that's why those players are out there. This is just a case of knowing name brand players, knowing who they are, and knowing where to place them in your rankings. But yeah, if you're looking at it, they're not doing very well right now. So yeah, they're not in my rankings. But excellent question, Raven. Excellent question. If you guys haven't signed up yet at idp.org, you can save 10% by using the code IDP Plus. Okay, IDP Plus Pod. And you'll get 10% off. You'll get great content. We have an awesome Discord with sit starts and analysts. I'm in there as well all week. If you need to find me, I write the waivers article on Fantasy Six Pack. I also do the standings article. As well as I'm over here, I do the pregame and postgames articles as well. Dr. James, tell the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can theoretically find me on Twitter at TFSDoc. I'm message only at this point. I don't post a lot. I'm trying to bring more positivity in my life, so not really there too much, but I do respond to all questions. I'm also in the Going for Two Discord. I have my own injury forum over there, so feel free to tag me with any injury questions there if you're interested in that. The Going for Two Discord, we got a lot of great analysts over there. You should be a member of the Fantasy Six Pack and the Going for Two Discord. The Going for Two Discord, free to join. A lot of really smart people in there. And of course, tag me at Dr. Jim with any questions, and I'm happy to respond to that. Do have an injury kind of roundup for the first half of the year, kind of halfway to the playoffs type of thing that I'm going to be doing, releasing it early next week. So that'll be there. And of course, there's the book, Injuries Suck, but your fantasy team doesn't have to. It's available on print version and e-version on Amazon, and it's even available on audiobook on audible.com. And especially if you like listening to the sexy baritone voice that you're listening to right now, narrated by yours truly, the author. You never really know when you're going to have to make these decisions. And what I really want to do with the book and with my content is make you, the reader, the listener, the content consumer, the best injury analyst, be able to run these things through your filter just the same way that I do, without the cost and expense of having to go to medical school and internship and residency and do all that kind of fun stuff, and get really, really good at getting that advantage, just like you get a really good advantage following Steve, the IDP Hunter, and all the guys that IDP guys and Fantasy Six Pack. So really, really a pleasure to be here, and I learned a lot. I know that if I learned a lot, then I know your audience members learned a lot, and
from each other we grow.
Yeah, and you're doing great stuff here, and I'm really interested. I think you might have convinced me to maybe jump into an IDP league at some point and start smacking some people around. So I'm not going anywhere. You're gonna be hearing more from me. I'm really, really loving the content here, and keep up the great work.
Awesome. And then again, guys, the book, Injury Sucks, but your fantasy team doesn't have to. It's on Amazon. I'm going to pick up a copy myself. I find this fascinating. And again, I get frustrated with injuries. I know we went a little longer this episode. I get frustrated with injuries, and I feel like I learned a lot more from the doc. I'm going to check you out. I'm not a baseball guy, but I'm going to check you out. I'm going for 2.
Well, the beautiful thing is that it applies to all sports. And I just want to throw one more thing out there. One difference, there are a lot of reporters out there, and what they do is they're great at their job. They report what other people tell them, but what other people tell them may not actually be factual. So when Adam Schefter reports that Jerome Ford has a low-grade high ankle sprain and he's going to miss a week or two, Adam Schefter's not sitting around thinking about, hey, is this really, accurate? Is this what a high ankle sprain is going to do? He's just saying, this person told me this, and I'm going to tell you, and that's great. But you got to be able to run it through your own filter, and that's where my content, putting the pieces of the puzzle together, looking at the injury, looking at the information that's out there, trying to piece it all together. That's what I do, and that's what I try to teach you to do, so you can gain an advantage over your competition, make better decisions, and hopefully win those titles.
Excellent. And then we're gonna carry this out. Hopefully, Doc, you'll come back. I mean, would you come back?
I would love it. It would be an honor and a privilege to be back here and learn even more. This was great. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to get to meet you, get to meet a new audience, and I really enjoyed it, Steve. So thanks so much.
Thank you. And I told the audience, they keep watching, they keep subscribing, they keep watching. I'll keep doing this content. There's only more room to grow. We're going to end this on a positive note. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having an audience. Hopefully this IDP podcast was informational to everyone. Hopefully we can weather the storm and kick butt this week in our leagues.
Good luck. Good luck this week, everyone.
All right. And see you guys.
Thank you for watching this IDP Guys video. If you like this content and you want more fantasy football content, click here. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos to help you master your IDP league, click here to subscribe.